Shout out to Magic Mind. It's a great pick-me-up for somebody like me with ADHD. Helps me focus, reduces my stress. And if you want to try it yourself, there's a massive discount with the link in the description. Go check it out. All right. We're back again after the last episode's audio completely just deleted itself. But I wanted to go over a few subjects that have been kind of like bubbling under the surface for the last couple weeks. And let's start very quickly with the infighting on the left and David Hogg versus the DNC. A few months ago, David Hogg, a well-known Parkland survivor and political advocate, was elected as vice chair of the Democratic Party. Hogg almost immediately made headlines right after that, saying that he actually wanted to primary incumbent Democrats who he felt were ineffective at challenging the Trump administration and pushing forward truly democratic ideals. He also encouraged older Democrats to step down and let the new generation come in, prompting political strategist James Carville to say he wanted to sue the contemptible little twerp, of course, right after he finished yelling at his daily cloud. And look, there was a huge outcry of anger from a lot of establishment Democratic pundits, with the new DNC chair Ken Martin criticizing Hogg for putting any sort of weight on the primary process. But you also saw significant support and defense of David Hogg from much more progressive activists who have felt frustration with the broader Democratic Party strategy. And all of that kept bubbling and bubbling and bubbling till earlier last week, the Democratic National Committee voted to void the internal election they had for both Malcolm Kenyatta and David Hogg as vice chairs, saying that they didn't follow the proper procedural things that they needed to do to make it. Yeah, sure, guys. To anybody with eyes and a functioning brain, this is obviously a how fucking dare you do this from the DNC. And it's not like nobody knew that David Hogg's comments would piss off establishment Dems like Carville. Now, Hogg isn't completely out. There are still some more procedural steps that need to happen, but party infighting over his ouster has rocketed to the front a lot of the internal struggles of the Democratic Party. And here's the thing I want to make clear before we go any further. Every fucking political party does this. Everyone, right? Constantly after a bruising election, it's always they're fighting over the soul and the direction of the party. It's establishment versus outsider. There are all these weird metrics to prove if you're really about the cause for more fringe candidates and more centrist candidates. Actually, you're not really on our side. You're actually a secret Republican or a secret Democrat, aren't you? And in this political environment, it just ends up turning into this big fucking fight about who's smarter, a but actually singularity of podcasts and influencers and debate bros who either look like plastic or like you'd get tetanus if you touch them. And for everybody witnessing all of that, there's this real palpable feeling that nothing will ever change. Right? This real sincere feeling of dread. If you're less towards the center of the party, you feel that the status quo will accomplish absolutely nothing. But if you're in the center of the party or more towards it, you must feel like, oh, these people are going to sabotage us all the time. They're so stubborn and uncompromising. And again, I can't stress, this is a problem that shifts between political movements and parties, because I'm going to hold your hand when I say this. Political parties fucking suck. All of them. They all suck. They're fucking record labels. Okay? All right? They operate the same way. They find people who they like, who they think will be really great public facing and who have a little bit of talent. They give them money and infrastructure to promote. And if the bet turns out great, cool. If not, fuck you. And this is all political parties, all right? If tomorrow you founded a third party and somehow you won 2026 and 2028 in wave elections, right? You somehow flipped the whole script on everybody. In 10 years, your political party will suck. Why? Because that's how this shit is organized. It's a record label. Now, that doesn't mean all people who work with political parties are grifting assholes. That also doesn't mean that every Democrat in the DNC is some weird shill. To be honest, if you've ever worked in any large company or corporation or even movement or community, you know this is a recurring, consistent problem with just huge organizations. They grow bigger and bigger and bigger with a lot of different opinions and cooks in the kitchen, and eventually it's like trying to turn the fucking moon. Because of this massive dissatisfaction with how this whole thing is set up, you tend to get a lot of disengagement politics, right, to kind of profit off of that, like Jill Stein and other really shitty people. Or you get Z Cohen Sanchez, who just is cringe. I'm not going to talk too much about the Unfuck America tour, but I will say, if you're trying to do a puff piece to kind of clean up your image, right? Or try to say that actually the people who are criticizing me are really fringe, performative activists. They're not really about the cause. Maybe you don't do an interview or puff piece with the guy accused of revenge porn. Maybe that. Okay? Also, this chart is fucking terrible. I don't know who taught you political science, but as a political strategist, putting this up is fucking embarrassing. Hire a legitimate PR firm. You're doing a terrible job. But look, it's easy to get lost in the fatalism of all of this, right? And just become a cynic about politics and the idea that you can achieve any sort of change at all. When that cynicism kicks in, there's this idea that everything now suddenly has to be perfect and exactly this, or you've achieved nothing, because you have achieved nothing. It's this idea that none of the progress has been made at all. But the fact of the matter is, right, historically, big political movements that achieve changes in the environment aren't usually completely aligned. Both establishment and outsiders are required to actually do something, and they have to mingle a little. This is not an opinion. This is a historical, contextual analysis of results of movements actually having changes in the political environment. Because I know people are worried about the infighting and everything. So look, let's go back to the guess it's the early aughts. We're going back there. I'm sorry. This is like, it's like you're getting my bread and butter, only because it is so similar, even with the outrage around it. Look, early on the post-John Kerry election cycle of, oh my God, what the fuck did we do? Democrats were in a very similar place and continued to fuck up far into 2005. I've already talked about George W. Bush fucking with the judiciary, all of his signing statements, him trying to put away Americans without due process. It's the same as this, but imagine Dick Cheney was with him. If you want a better metaphor, imagine the Bush administration as the original trilogy, and then imagine the Trump administration as the sequel trilogy. Okay? Fine. That is what it is, but you know, the villains lack a little bit in the second part, right?
Somehow Palpatine returned.
It's the same shit, a little bit more intense, but a little less original. But look, after that brutal election in 2004, right, where the national environment really did not like Democrats, right? The culture wars were at an all-time high. The DNC needed to reorganize. And there was a major fight within the party going on, all right, between Howard Dean's 50-state strategy and the Democratic Leadership Council's more moderate focus. Establishment Democrats like Rahm Emanuel were incredibly risk averse and didn't want to rock the boat. All the same shit that you're seeing now in the face of what people in 2004 were calling a more authoritarian form of the presidency. And both sides of that coin in the Democratic Party were pretty absolutist, right? It's either we do this specific strategy or we're super risk averse or we fucking lose everything, right? They didn't want to give an inch to any sort of other ideas. But what ended up happening in 2006 and 2008 is both sides had a significant part in two landslide victories. For example, in the run-up to the 2006 election, because of the culture war and how Bush had painted all Democrats as these bleeding, anti-freedom loving fucking hippies, running moderate Democrats in those battleground states actually helped chip away at that narrative to help showcase that you can have issues with the Iraq war and still love freedom while still being a Democrat. And these moderates had a huge machine behind them. They had messaging discipline, they had strong donor networks, and a consistent strategy. Political machines like the Reid machine helped them secure a massive victory in the House in 2006. A lot of the Blue Dog Coalition were the ones who ended up making it into the House, but the ones who ended up building the infrastructure to make that happen and eventually make more progressive candidates be able to seek seats in the House and in the Senate were the progressives under Howard Dean. Dean's populist approach to hitting all 50 states expanded the Democratic map. And new organizations like Act Blue and Move On and early online bloggers and activists like the Daily Kos and Mother Jones gave the Democrats a funding network and a media arm to fight the conservative online radio takeover. All of these new media outlets were considered to be fringe groups the Democrats shouldn't associate with. Oh, not the Daily Show or the Colbert Report. Middle America doesn't like them. Just a side note, Nancy Pelosi at one point told people to not go on the Colbert Report. I've mentioned it before in one of the other videos. But lo and behold, that media strategy worked. It was able to effectively offer a competitor to conservative online talk radio. And when Obama came along, he merged the two strategies together. He built off the progressive energy while also building his own grassroots machines. He had establishment Democrats give him credibility. Why the fuck do you think he chose Biden as his VP? And through all of the different strategies in 2008, with these people clashing with one another, but ending up working together towards one goal, throwing stuff at a wall, led to a wave election and a shift from George Bush's culture war. I cannot tell you how fucking crazy it is, right? If you were to go back in time and tell somebody in 2008 or 2007, in 2 years, the Iraq war will be universally seen as the biggest foreign policy blunder since Vietnam, people would call you crazy and think like, oh no, there's no way these people will shift. There's no way they'll give an inch and a mile. And yet here we are, and historically, it's a fuck up universally. Now let's also be fair. Obama shifted to the center as time went on due to Republican attacks and a need to pass bipartisan legislation against some pretty aggressive media spin. There were still progressive pushes he took, but ultimately, the Clinton Democrats retook full control of the party in 2016. And we are here now. So look, going back to David Hogg and this whole situation, when I see people on Twitter or headlines saying the DNC will never learn, yeah, they're a fucking political party. Political parties don't learn shit. They just bandwagon. If you were to found the leftist coalition of mutual aid, climate change is real and you have to save everybody party, and you ran a bunch of candidates and they all got into office, and it suddenly became popular to fucking spray aerosol into the ozone, one of those people who was trying to fight climate change would 100% be like, well, can we just like maybe hedge a little bit? Political parties bandwagon. They just do it. But also, I don't think this is a sign that nothing will ever change. This is the fight. You're in it now. We're a year and some change out from the first of two very big elections over the next 4 years, right? Media figureheads are already emerging and positioning themselves. Opposition party narratives are building. The party who lost is still fumbling like they got over a hangover, which is historically normal at this point. And if you want a succinct direction, the goal should not be to blame people for who is more responsible for losing the 2024 election more. The goal should be, what do we want the world to look like post-2026 and post-2028? If you want unity on the left or party unity or whatever, right, that doesn't come from saying you're unrealistic about expectations, but saying, let's figure it out. That's the fucking point of all of this. The answer to people being upset about kids dying in Gaza isn't shut up and vote. It's let's figure that out. Let's figure it out. The answer to people wanting less left-based purity testing isn't you're secretly not about the cause. It's let's figure it out. If tomorrow the Democrats said everything you wanted and capitulated entirely to your specific politics, things would not suddenly change for the better. Whether you are centrist or leftist, right? They could denounce the genocide and Gaza would not get better. They could run a clone of Barack Obama made from recycled paper straws and still lose to JD Vance and a giant bottle of eyeliner. Having the right politics is like 30% of what you need to do, right? But working towards figuring out goals and how to implement those things is another. The Democrats won't save you. But that's a good thing, because I don't want record labels to make my music. I want the artists to. So for the record, I am not saying go hug a Democrat or go give shit to a leftist. I am definitely saying fuck the Green Party because they don't give a shit about any of this. I am saying if you want to engage towards the issues you want, now's the time to engage. Even if it is making a third party, I still hate the Green Party, but even if it is figuring out the best way to move forward as a coalition to try to help promote people and the ideas that you want in the best way. David Hogg is going to, James Carville is going to. Are you? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, real quick story just before we finish up. Let's talk about Joey Badass versus the West Coast. Holy shit, we in it now. It's been about a year or so since probably the biggest rap beef in modern history, Drake versus Kendrick Lamar, concluded, unless you're a serial academics fan or you think Bigfoot exists or other weird shit. But look, as amazing as that was, when it comes to rap battles, some of the best battles that have come about have been when it's competition and not pure conflict. I mean, both definitely work, right? But when it's healthy competition, it's MCs sharpening their blades and making each other better, and the culture elevates because of it. Dropping tracks to see who can dig the deepest and bar up the best, man, it is one of my favorite things, and guess what? We are back in season. So this is Joey Badass, right? A veteran NYC MC who came to prominence when he dropped 1999. Joey's been building a bit of a comeback recently. And in the run-up to that comeback, he's wanted a lot of smoke to sharpen his pen with, specifically with the West Coast. So on New Year's 2025, Joey drops The Ruler's Back, a giant swing at West Coast hip-hop, saying that the West Coast has become overconfident with Kendrick's win. Too much West Coast dick licking. I'm hearing hitters throwing rocks, really ain't shit sticking. Cause if we talking bar for bar, really it's slim pickings. I rap like I draw pentagrams and kill chickens. Oh, and I'm not the only one. West Coast rapper Dillon responded to Joey with HYU, showing some love to New York, but also throwing a few strays and warnings at Joey to watch his mouth or risk an all-out war. Well, about that, Ray Vaughn, one of the biggest new hip-hop acts on the West Coast and TDE affiliated, fired directly at Joey on January 8th with Crash Out Heritage. What's with the sneak diss and taking shots at us, then hide the Uzi, cause the only badass the world was recognizing is boozy. Please don't get confused with shooting the movies. We really shooting was on Soul's album, so if you ask me, you looking goofy. Oh! And you had some other acts step up like Curtis King. But look, Ray, Dillon, and Joey were the most prominent players in this initially. Well, Joey responded with sorry, not sorry. Fuck it, I want all the smoke. Put my credit on the line, cause hitters can't fuck with me. We talking about it line for line. The audacity of this hitter must be out his mind. Haunted by the ghost of Biggie and Pac, I'm them combined. Oh, what? And he put out a fucking video? That's when you had Pro Era, a label affiliated with Joey Badass. Pro Era rapper CJ Fly dropped a HYU freestyle defending Joey over Dillon's previously used beat, which is a respectable amount of disrespect. Throwing shots at the West Coast in the process, you see where this is going. And it has only escalated since then. On May 20th, there were 15 tracks that dropped from different rappers on different coasts, all throwing shots, and they're all fucking gas. But what kind of cements the vibe of this whole East Coast, West Coast beef right now, right, is the Red Bull freestyle with Joey Badass, Big Sean, and Ab-Soul. Ab-Soul, a West Coast born and bred Kendrick ally, threw shots at Joey in the room, right? And Joey responded with his verse clarifying he loves the West Coast. And he's just trying to reignite that West Coast, East Coast rivalry, but without the violence. And that is fucking hip hop. Here's what you should care about this. These are the kind of battles in music that elevate everybody in this genre. This is what Kendrick v. Drake could have been if lines weren't crossed. It's still fucking legendary regardless, right? But this is something that could have elevated the whole scene. I love this kind of shit, man. There's a respect to people in this battle, right? But a disrespect when it comes to, no, you ain't got it like me. And that competition elevates everybody's game and how people approach the music, what they want to do differently. Sometimes it feels very much like hip hop gets into these spaces of, all right, well, what is the track that's going to break through in the market, and what's TikTokable, and you know, what do we do to make sure this reaches the masses? I'm not trying to complain like all label shit, but it just gets very, very heady about how to market the brand. This is who's the best, right? Who can win? It's not about the brand, it's about the bars, and I fucking love it. And listen, this is not to say that beefs don't get contentious, right? But I think people who are outside of this world have to know there is a respect that comes in that disrespect. Not every beef is just a proxy for shooting at each other, right? Sometimes it really is just competition. It's sports. It's a race. It's a battle with everybody watching. When 2 or 20 MCs agree to go at each other, trying their best to outdo the other to the point where you get 15 fucking tracks in a day and everybody is hype and listening, it just means more music, man. And the skill level ratchets up. I'm fucking hype. I want to drop something. Fuck it. I have Evo. I'm tired. But listen, I'll link a thread to all the songs and names of what's dropped so far. If you want to have a good time, go take a listen. Let me know what you think in the comments. And that's our show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Go watch the new episode of Go for Lethal. Go watch last week's Freestyle of the News. And we'll be back on Sunday. My name is Tabani. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all soon. Let's go.